It's funny. I'm giving a break here because it's been cutting off the beginnings of my live streams. There we go. Welcome to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Friday, September 13th. Hey, dude.
What?
It's Friday the 13th.
Okay.
What are we going to do about that?
Nothing.
Really? You're not freaked out?
No.
Are you going to pet the black cat today?
Do you know where Friday the 13th actually came from?
Are we going to talk about that right now?
Yeah.
Sure, go for it. But you got to sit down and get close to the mic if you're going to do that rather than stand in the doorway. While you tell them, I'm going to go get my water.
Most people don't even realize Friday the 13th came from, what was it, the French king and the Pope going after the Knights Templar. And it was basically a ploy just to get all of their treasure. And it just happened to be the Friday that they, executed the order to go seize everything happened to be on the 13th of the month. And so that's where that whole thing comes from. So no, I put absolutely no stock in Friday the 13th being bad luck.
Are you superstitious?
No.
No? Do you believe in ghosts?
They're ghost in the term that most people use it, no.
Okay. In what term do you believe in it? Boy, finding that button was super tricky.
Yes, there are spiritual entities. There's stuff besides us. There's actually that delves into the whole hyperdimensional world of.
So when you do things at the homestead that Mr. Cruz would not approve of, do you think it's him who's like destroying the stuff?
No.
No? Okay. If like I trick you into eating lab-grown meat and it kills you, are you going to come back and haunt me though?
No.
Oh, okay. So that's where his line is on. Yeah, Janet says, this is the content I am here for. Janet, welcome to the live stream. Folks, if you are live, oh boy, that made a big loud noise right there. That's kind of annoying on the audio podcast.
Okay.
Leave your lid off for the show, okay? Okay. Anyway, if you are in the live stream and want to have a question or have us talk about something, please, please, please put the word question or comment in all caps so that I see it with these aging eyes. And do let your folks know who would maybe want to see this podcast. Hey, we're live. Come on in. Join the show. That sort of thing. Okay, what we're going to talk about today is a whole list of stuff, but mostly it's about working with a hyper-focus redneck. I'm going to talk a little bit about that because he's been in hyper-focus mode and we do have other things we need to do. And that relates very much to managing a homestead when you have a fairly large infrastructure project happening. We're going to talk about autumn and a whole bunch of other stuff. Before we do that, I do want to talk about our featured event of today's show. And it's the Advanced Wound Closures class with Chuck Peoples, which is October 3rd at the Self-Reliance Festival, which we host at Special Operations Equipment in Camden, Tennessee. This is a great class. And I got to thinking about this class because I had a weird dream. Guess what I was dreaming about?
Tourniquets.
Yeah, you know why?
House.
Because last night on House, or was it 2 nights ago on House, and I was like literally screaming at the TV. So we watched House while we ate dinner, and somebody cut the femoral artery and was like spurting blood out. And I was like, man, that'd be a good time to have a tourniquet in your pocket. Maybe we should make sure we always have tourniquets in our pocket. And then his coworker ran over to him and saved his life by putting the tourniquet where? It was like below where the cut was. So it was like, okay, the tourniquet, I'm screaming, the tourniquet's in the wrong place. And then she was like, I have to deal with this bleed right away, drags him into this thing and has to stop the bleeding at the arterial level right away. And I'm like, yeah, because you put the tourniquet in the wrong place. But you can leave a tourniquet on for a long time. Oh, so why do I know that? Because I've taken some of these classes. So I was screaming at the TV and what'd you say? You said
something along the lines of, now you know how I feel watching pretty much every movie ever.
Yeah. So
like,
especially with your military perspective when there's military things.
Well, it's 90% of anything. Guns are the worst. I mean, one of the ones that sticks out in my brain the most was the movie Shooter, and at the end, the climactic scene, they fire 7 rounds out of a Beretta 92 and the slide locks to the rear. And it's like, so you brought a half empty gun to a gunfight? Because that thing holds 15 rounds. Like, I can't help that I have all this information in my head and you didn't bother doing your research to make a movie. Like,
okay, so back to the event at hand. So the reason you would want to take some of these classes, twofold. One, so you can yell at the TV about it being totally wrong. Two, having those skills when you're on the homestead is super helpful because sometimes you've got to do stuff. And, learning how to properly put on a tourniquet to stop a bleed can save somebody's life. And that's super important. Knowing that you can leave that tourniquet on for more than 45 minutes and they really won't lose their limb, also very helpful knowledge. Knowing what to do to close wounds if you cannot get the person to the doctor, also really helpful. And when to close wounds and when not to close wounds for infection purposes, how to care for them, and all of those other things these are skills that are helpful to have, not just for people, but for your livestock, because stuff happens to your livestock too. And I find I actually do a lot more medical intervention on my livestock than anything else. So that class is over at selfreliancefestival.com. If you just scroll down, you'll see all the shortcuts to the workshops, or click on workshops. You can see all of the workshops we have. And if you're on Noster, pay attention to my profile because there might be a coupon code getting launched later today. Just saying. If you decide you want to add that class, you really ought to do that. And if you're not on Noster, find somebody who's a friend who's on Noster, because it's probably worth doing, or get yourself set up on Noster, but we'll talk about that later in the show. Okay. I also want to thank 2 sponsors today. I got my business taxes in today, September 23rd, 2023. And do you know when the deadline is?
For which year?
This year. Or for 2023.
Yeah, so like you're only like a year and a half late.
No, that's my 2023's. But do you know what the deadline is for it? September 15th, which I think is Sunday, which makes it the 16th. Oh. So I'm just under the line, man. But I was like really thinking about Matthew because he's been working with me to look at how we track expenses, how my businesses are structured, and all of that so that I can better optimize tax write-offs. And every so often he finds something. He's like, you could be tracking this way, and maybe you should do that. I have my full-on meeting with him after the October 15th deadline, which is the personal tax filing deadline for people who file late. And I actually told him, I was like, so it's been an amazing year. I now have all of my financial stuff mostly automated through QuickBooks Online, which I had walked away from because they didn't track what I needed them to track, which QuickBooks on a floppy drive that you would, or a CD-ROM that you would have installed in the 90s did what I needed it to do, but their online version never has. Well, they finally added some features that made it so it would. And that's good because I really wanted to get that done. Now, I tried to deploy Xero, Xero, and it worked okay, but it did some things from a financial tracking standpoint that doesn't work as well in the US. And by the time I was going to find somebody to get it all set up, it was becoming a big mess. So luckily in our network is somebody who's a CFO level person at I'm not going to say where she works, but she has been at different positions since I've known her for like a decade now, almost a decade. And she was like, let me just see, and let me see all your stuff, and let me see if we can get this automated for you, because I can tell that's what you need. And I was like, here's all the spreadsheets, here's all the statements, here's all the stuff. This is what I want to track. This is how I want to be able to get information from it. And I don't even know how many hours she put in on this. But what I know is when my accountant asked me for an extra piece of information for my taxes this week, I was able to log in and in less than 5 minutes, pull a report, send it to the accountant, and it was awesome. So I sent Matthew an email and I said, well, thanks to you needing to have all of this information about how I'm structured, my financial tracking is way more like automated, in check, and I'm getting the information I need from it. So thanks for that too. So that was like a side benefit of working with Matthew. Now he has people I think who work on this sort of thing as well, who he can recommend that you like reach out to. But I will say this, since working with Matthew, I've become much better at finding ways to optimize my tax write-offs, which means I keep more of my money in my pocket. And that's the service he offers. It seems ridiculously simple, but it's like, it's one of those things that's simple in concept, but it's not necessarily easy to execute, kind of like freedom. Check out more, agoristaxadvice.com. Our second sponsor of today's show is Discount Mylar Bags, because somebody's not paying attention to the show notes. He was like, oh no, she's going to ask me, and I didn't look ahead.
No, I didn't.
Okay, so Toby's been working with me forever to help keep hollow roast bags sourced the way we need them sourced. And what he's really good at is sourcing things in bulk and passing on the savings to you. You can find out more at discountmylarbags.com. And if you are not sure what size bags and what sorts of things you need to store your food, then you can go over to the website on the right hand. He has a few articles written that help you maybe rethink how you think about this, because the first instinct is biggest bag possible in a 5-gallon bucket. Boom. Done. And it does get it done. And if that's where you're at, you can get it done. However, if you ever need to use what's in that 5-gallon bucket, and there are only 2 of you, even if one of them eats like 3 people, that's a lot to go through when you open the bag, even if it's freeze-dried ground beef. Even though he can eat like, I think you ate 5 or 6 pounds of meat yesterday.
That's not surprising at all.
He was mainlining meat yesterday. So anyway, that's the deal. Check it out. Discountmylarbags.com. If you're a member, you can also get a discount. So let's talk about the only thing you care about right now. How's the pool project going? I asked him, I was like, let's arrange your transportation for this and blah, blah, blah for Sulphur Lights Festival. And he was like, what'd you tell me?
That's a conversation we can have next week. Like, my bandwidth is occupied right now. Like, all of it.
Where is it?
Mostly in that concrete slab.
Ah, so how is the concrete slab going?
I mean, we finally got lumber for framing, which will make this a little bit easier to finalize. The actual layout of it, it would have been useful to have that, 3 days ago. But I managed to get things mostly level around the perimeter, so that will make getting the framing in place a bit easier. But it's still like there's going to be a decent amount of shovel work left to get ready.
Do you wish you had a mini skid steer right now?
At this point, I actually wouldn't be able to use a mini skid, but like 2 days ago, yes.
Yeah. So we still want one of those. Probably should have rented one of those. I'm not sure why we didn't rent one of those, because I asked you if you wanted to rent one of those and you said no.
Well, at the time, it was like I couldn't foresee exactly what was about to happen.
Hindsight is 2020. But I feel like if there's a project of this nature, a mini skid steer is never unwelcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as you're committed to doing the mini skid steer stuff. So we're scheduled for a concrete pour next week. And that means that what's happening this weekend is a lot of getting ready for the concrete pour. And then I also asked him if there's extra concrete, maybe have a 6x6 foot area where you can pour I ordered a little extra concrete. We may end up needing that because we may not be as level on the gravel as we want to be, but it's coming together. And it is, what would you say, like, from managing the other parts of the homestead, what's the biggest challenge with this big project going on, and then all the needs of all the critters and the plants?
Well, I mean, it's the reason that I've set all the animals up the way that they are is because, my philosophy has always been I want as little required interaction with the animals as possible. And then anything after that is just because I want to. But that also means that for weeks like this, I'm not spending 5 hours doing animal stuff and then using my leftover time to go work on a big project. It's I can work on the big project and I've got to break off at a certain point and say, okay, it's time to start getting animals put to bed. And then, if I've got 10 minutes after that, fine. If not, oh well.
So it's coming together. I don't know how things will go next week, but I do know that our Tuesday live will be exactly 1 hour because the Tuesday coffee chat, because I want to have a cushion between that and the pour is on Tuesday at 11 in the morning. Yeah. So we're going to make sure that show is just an hour, not an hour and a half or 2 hours. I have to move a call I have that day too. That's right in the middle of the pour. But I called the concrete company and I ordered the stuff and they're like, yep, we can get there right about that time. That's perfect. So everything's good to go. And I'm interested in what we'll learn on Tuesday and how tired we'll be. So I'm not actually committing to anything Tuesday afternoon. Not that I won't do anything, but when I talked to Jason, he said it's going to be a half hour of sort of intensive work for this size of a thing, and then probably about a 2-hour period of time to refine how the pad looks. And so that puts us, into the afternoon, and then I'm going to guess that we will be tired from that work. So yeah, if I can hook up if I can just hook up a camera to do a time lapse of that, that might be totally worth doing.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Maybe I can stream it. If it's not weird weather, then I will stream that for sure. Okay. So that's the biggest on-site development focus. But at the same time, we talked a few months ago about moving the garden from zone 2 to zone 1. And we had an excavator in related to this project. So obviously at the same time, you might as well shape the earth for the garden redo. So we did that. And the first bed was ready. And by we, I mean, he's done most of the work, by the way, just for clarity's sake. But we made a video about how that first bed's been put together and some things we've learned about working with Vivor, those Vivor beds, because they're like a screaming deal right now. They're under $100 for a 4-foot by 8-foot bed that's 2 feet tall, all metal parts. But if you aren't careful about how you fill them and how you put them together, you may end up regretting having spent the money on that because they can cave in or bulge out if you do it wrong. And but then for $100 for a garden bed for materials, it's not going to rot in 1 year. It's not a bad deal. What are your thoughts on those beds right now? That's a very long pause for an audio podcast.
I mean, personally, for most people, it's probably fine. For my OCD, I probably wouldn't use them again. I'm going to run with what we have right now just to experiment, test, play with it. I would say if you're going to buy them, I would replace the cross pieces with something not that.
Why?
They're too flimsy.
Okay, so he wants a stronger, because it's like a big square and it has cross pieces that are designed to keep it from bulging out when you put soil in there. And so they're dependent on the tension out to work.
I think that probably, as much as it would tweak my OCD, I would probably use a piece of all thread with a nut and a washer on both sides of each piece of metal. And that would work far better than that piece of tin foil that they send with it.
Okay, so that's just trying to give a realistic assessment of those beds, because I do talk about them from an affiliate standpoint, and it's important to me to have direct experience with these things, and then also explain how to use them. There will be a video coming out. It's like we just talked about the bed and how we put it together and covered some of the ways that we're making sure we don't set up ourselves for future problems with the beds. For example, we have a layer of logs in the bottom that will decompose, and then the whole level of the soil goes down. Well, if that's under those crossbars, they pull the sides in. So under the crossbars, we've like packed up soil so that it won't do that.
Yeah, and I actually lifted the cross pieces up a little bit so that they can settle out. And when they do settle out, they'll be more level than they already are now.
So I really do like investing in quality for long-term payoff. And for me, it's sort of like a spreadsheet. My sister calls it the cost to fun ratio. But for me, it's like the cost to duration and utility on something like this. And so to make this from our own parts the way we'd want to, I'm interested in getting that cost, because we kind of did a back of a napkin thing. But if you were going to make something down by the cabin, it'd be interesting to see what you'd make and what that would cost. And it would last probably longer than the Vevor beds. The Vevor beds last a long time. And at 90, I think it's $98 right now, price point, it's, you know, it's going to last a while. And then if you were going to buy lumber, which lasts about 2 years in Tennessee, that's another price. Cinder block is another price. So it was sort of like looking at all those different things. I decided to opt for an actual middle of the road solution and go from there. And we'll see how it goes. But that was a time where, because we talked about this on sort of inflation proofing your future, this was a time where I just was not up for putting all of my resources, which I have to choose where they go, into one thing that was going to last for 100 years, which would have been the cinder block approach. I really wanted to, I did a middle of the road thing, which is more for me. And, you know, wherein if you contrast what's going on with the concrete pad, that's more of a very long-term solution.
Yeah. And for me, there's an aspect to it. It's like, I have probably 3 or 4 designs for something that would be far better than those Vevor beds. The downfall of any of that is it requires me to build them.
Yeah.
And I just don't have the time right
well, we're
now.
not going to do it. So it's not even that you don't have the time. It's that you're not making the time for that. You're making the time for other things.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's what I'm saying is it's like picking and choosing your battles. It's like,
well, I pick on you for that because people say they don't have time. It's like, it's that you're not making time for something. And when you reframe it that way, you remind yourself, okay, I'm choosing this over that. So you understand your trade-offs. Now, I know you've thought about all that, but I'm picking on people for how they talk to themselves this week because it's something somebody said to me earlier.
Well, I mean, when I say that I don't have time, it's not because I'm sitting here dilly-dallying on Facebook looking at pointless stuff. Like, if I'm on a phone, then I'm probably looking up videos on...
Anyway, so we get the point.
Like, stuff like that. So when I say that I don't have the time, it's because my time is already allocated to another project.
Yeah, so I'm pretty happy. So it kind of sounds like we're pissing on the Vevor beds. I'm not pissing on the Vevor beds. I'm actually happy with what they are for what they do for the price point, and the longevity. I think I'll get off, and we'll know in a few more years if they really last as long as I think they're going to last. And then somebody else raised the question, like, they didn't use them in Tennessee because they're black. Sun hits the black and it's too hot. And so we will, well, I was like, I'll know next summer if that is a problem or not. I have had that issue with black plastic pots. But boy, if you put peppers in those, they go nuts. So we'll see, because we do have, like, our plan includes a big overhead thing where shade cloth goes for the summer anyway, because that's what we do in the kitchen garden to make it work anyway. So we'll see how that goes. And if not, then I will be talking about that next year. Anyway, I really like them. They take forever to put together. And those crossbars are really where you want to have attention on what you're doing if you're going to use those beds. And I'm actually stoked that the first bed is in, and we put a sage plant in honor of Sage the dog, who used to be here. And yeah, so that was good. And then Cece came out and tried to dig up Sage's plant because apparently Cece wants her own plant.
Cece wants to just tear that whole bed up.
Makes sense. Okay. Speaking of community, I asked you if anything cool happened with the community around us, and you were like, so somebody's been ill, so we haven't been doing a lot as holler neighbors. But when we had a big pile of rock that looked like an insurmountable mountain of rock to move with shovels, what did we do?
Called the neighbor.
A neighbor came over with his tractor and like helped spread that out, which how many days did that save you if you were going to try to do that by hand?
That probably saved me at least about a day's worth of work. Like, I've moved basically 2 dump truck loads of dirt by hand in the recent past.
Yeah,
and
gravel is harder to move.
Oh my God. Just trying to knock some of that gravel off the top to start to spread it out was just like, I did it just to see
how bad could it be.
Well, I mean, it's like I'm gonna go down there and spend at least 10 or 15 minutes in moving some of this by hand, even though I know the tractor's coming, just because I want to see what kind of effort is required for that. And it was like, yeah, it was ridiculous.
So I had to shovel out gravel from the back of a truck. In fact, it was probably the Mitsubishi Mighty Max. It was in Portland, Oregon, because I put a French drain in the front yard and then brought the downspouts back down to that French drain, right?
Yeah.
So it wouldn't go into the house and it wouldn't go into the sewage system. And the last step was shovel the gravel into this pit. It was a very long day. That's all I can say. And then there is the day after day that you lose too for after doing something like that. So that's the deal. Anyway, having that tractor and having our neighbor come down and help us with that tractor was a game changer. And I kind of feel like if we would have had our own tractor, it might have been better for what followed, or a skid steer or something. So that's just another chink in the to-do list, priority list of working on getting some sort of equipment here if we're going to keep doing stuff like this. That's my thought. So guess what time it is for the rabbits?
Has it already been that long?
It's already been that long. It's time to put the nesting boxes in with the girls. And we know what happens when we don't put the nesting boxes in with the girls.
Yeah.
So what I was going to do this time, because the thing about the nesting boxes we use is they work great. The one thing that's kind of gross is that there's this insert that comes out to make it easier to clean in the bottom that's made out of wood. And like you put that in, you put straw in, the rabbit hops in there, gives birth, the little babies stay in there, they poop and pee in there. And then when you take the babies out, there's like rabbit poop and pee all over those boards. And we've tried different things in there. I think what I'm going to do is go to the Dollar Tree and buy those super thin plastic cutting boards and trim one of those down for the inside to see if that works. Because then at least you can spray it off. Because what happens with the wood is it just starts kind of rotting.
Yeah. Normally I would say no on that because those are plastic and the rabbits would chew on them. Like, that's why anything that I put in there, like, they sell these little plastic like feed dishes and stuff.
Oh yeah, those become gone.
Why would you sell that for a rabbit? Because all they do is eat the plastic. But because that plastic would be buried under the straw, theoretically they won't actually eat it.
Right. So we'll see. It'll be worth it. Like the look on his face when I said that was like, oh, that's a good idea, Nicole.
Well, my initial reaction was no, because they're plastic, but then I think about the fact that they're going to be buried under the straw, so hopefully, yeah, because my intent is to have one of the other neighbors fold some metal over to make a metal insert for the bottom.
Yeah, I would love a metal insert for those, but we have rabbits coming in a week.
Yeah.
So I usually put it out a week in advance. So it's about a week away. And we indeed need to do that. He's getting paged by one of the dogs outside. So the next thing that happened this week is I have some forage growing here that's not growing on the Willis's compound. It's Special Operations Equipment. And I've been talking to Amanda about it. And I was like, okay, we're getting like this herb or that herb. Are you getting that herb? And two of them, they're not really getting much of or any of that I've heard of. I'll have to actually double check with Amanda on that. So I went around and was harvesting it for her to bring to Self-Reliance Festival. So she has it for like winter tinctures and stuff. And she was like, yeah, I need those two things. And I got them all gathered. And then I realized we're going to use more of them this year. And there's been a second wave of one of them's goldenrod. There's been a second wave of goldenrod. And then we harvested some passion flower vine, right? Passion fruit vine. And we're starting to use more of that too. So we're going to do a second round of harvesting for Amanda this week, like coming up. I think I already got the second round of goldenrod, right?
I got another round of goldenrod. There's probably going to be another one if I can get around to it today or tomorrow.
Yeah. Hey, DFW Mike says, how about a paper bag? Nope. Tried cardboard once. Those rabbits died. We need something that won't break down if it gets wet and that will not be super tempting to chew up and turn into nesting material, which any paper product becomes really interesting to the rabbits to make for their nest as well. Question, would you avoid goldenrod near commercial fields? How far would you go? That depends on what's going with the commercial field and how sensitive you are to overspray. In general, I don't worry about that too much. Like if it's right in there, I might worry about it. But like I'd rather do that than pull it off the side of a freeway. That being said, my road where we get like 2 to 4 cars a day, I don't really worry so much about what might be thrown up from cars because there's not a lot of cars coming through. So I mean, set back as far as you can, look for sources that are as clean as you can. But then there's also the do what you can with what you have.
Yeah.
That's my thought on that.
Yeah. And I mean, it's also kind of like once you start looking for it and you know what you're looking for and it's in the back of your brain, you'll start noticing it.
Yes. And you'll see it all over the place. And if it's really somewhere where you're like, I just don't know, let it go to seed, collect the seed and put it somewhere where you do want it. Because that's the other thing Amanda's getting. I'm giving her goldenrod seed because she said she had a lot of goldenrod last year and not this year so that she can decide if she wants to cultivate a patch of it there. And if she has somewhere she wants us to put the seed at Self-Reliance Festival, we'll just hand that over to Tim Riley or Carrie Brown and have them go be seed fairies because that's like the best way to get that done, I think. Yeah. So that's what we're doing as far as forage goes. Okay. Last week I had an interview with Hakeem from Above Phone. And it's because I've decided to practice what I preach and de-Google myself more. Yes, I'm coming to you on Google's platform, YouTube. By which I mean I'm still using the tools I need to use to get the word out as best I can, but I've been all in on this whole decentralized concept. And on the tech side, that's a lot harder to do. But in the last couple of years, a system called Nostr has come to be. And I was on Nostr a year ago. I had sort of a phone meltdown and have just not put the time into getting it all set up the way I wanted it in different places. Well, I made a commitment this month to start getting those sorts of technologies back working and integrating with each other into my day-to-day. And I'm back on Nostr, and it's because the old phone that I replaced is still in existence. It just works on Wi-Fi only. So I hopped in there and started using Nostr again, which has improved a lot in the last year. And I also would love to connect with you if you're on Nostr. Like find me. My my Noster keys are in, I believe they're in my profiles on most things on like Twitter and all that other stuff. I will update it on the website. We're putting a more of a connect on social area that's easier to find, and then get that going, because even if you're using the other systems like Facebook and whatnot, having that backup is super helpful. And then once you tap into the Noster community, you end up you find a whole group of people who are either banned from or no longer on or unwilling to invest in those social networks, and it expands your horizon. And there are a ton of homesteaders there, tons and tons of homesteaders there. The thing is, if you want to get started with Noster, we'll do some sessions on that. You need to probably learn a little bit about how to connect people, because what's not going to happen on Noster is they're not going to suggest, you don't have like a suggested accounts thing. So I feel like we should put a little work group together on because Rachel's saying I need to give Noster another try. Yeah. So when you first try, if you don't have like a way to ask questions, even though like Jack Spirko's put together some stuff on how to get started and that sort of thing, I think you end up sometimes at dead ends, and it just doesn't work that great. I've had the benefit of having access to somebody who has spent time playing with Noster, and I was in like sort of the Unloose the Goose after party group, which was like a secret little group on Telegram. They were sharing best practices, and I've been lucky that one of my friends from there has answered my questions in particular this week, because I'm like, okay, I'm back. I basically, like, I have the basics of understanding how keys work, backup phrases, wallets, and all of that stuff from getting into cryptocurrency years ago. So that part's all there. If you don't have that part yet, that's where we're starting with you, right? And then like which clients work on which phone and all these things, because Noster is not a social network like Facebook. It's a protocol like email, which means Google uses the same protocol as Microsoft, which uses the same protocol as GoDaddy, which uses the same protocol as ProtonMail. And you can set up a box in your house, set it up as an email server, and you use that protocol. That's how Noster is, but for conversations between people, which is social networking. That difference is what is a game changer in Noster, I think. So we'll set up that work group. It'll take me a while to get it going, but we'll get there. But that being said, in the show notes, you will find a link to my Noster profile. Definitely friend me up. I'll follow you back as fast as I can. And as we get closer to Self-Reliance Festival, that will be less fast, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. MeWe, meanwhile, is going through a change that a lot of people on our MeWe group don't like. And so I'm just talking about social networks and networking with homesteaders here. So Letty set up they're moving over to Discord because they don't want to be on Facebook or Telegram. And I don't want to set up a Signal and blah, blah, blah. So just if you're in the MeWe group, get over on Discord if that's where you want to go, or follow me on Noster. I think there's a groups feature coming or existing in Noster or through Primal or something. I don't know. I'm still figuring this stuff out. If I can do a Noster group too, we will get that started. But definitely check out the Discord. We're currently just going into the Survival Podcast Discord because unless I have hundreds of people going on to Discord, it doesn't make sense to set up our own server. And there's a lot of great knowledge and background and information you can already get on the Survival Podcast Discord. So that's where we are. Okay. So connecting with community, that's ways you can do it. There is, just in case you're new to the podcast, there's a Facebook group, there's a Telegram group, there's now going to be a Discord situation, there's a MeWe group that is waning, and Self-Reliance Festival just launched a group, and there's a whole bunch of cool stuff going on there. So there's lots of ways to connect with homesteaders. Definitely do that and connect, because is homesteading easy alone?
No.
Is homesteading better when you have a community?
Yes.
Yes. It's funny. I was just editing shorts that are being put out around the Self-Reliance Festival, and the Hand Hewed Farms guys, like the guys who did butchering last time, the first thing he said was, it's so important to have somebody else with you on the journey, because there are days that suck on the homestead.
Yeah.
And it's nice to have somebody else there to embrace the suck with you, because you just got to deal with the suck when it happens. And I'm like, and celebrate all the good stuff, right? Like, every time I have a cup of coffee outside and it's a cool, crisp morning and we can just enjoy being outside, it's like, that's why we're here, right?
Yeah.
That's why. Even though there's freaking mosquitoes that I need to deal with, but I will deal with those this weekend probably. Because you're not, because it's not on your to-do list. Because where is your to-do list? Where is your brain?
Anywhere but there, especially seeing as how the mosquitoes aren't bothering me at all.
Yeah, there. I'm like filled with bites right now. Okay. This week I've gone back to cooking, like almost normal cooking schedule, and I'm cooking in bulk and getting more convenience food into the freezer so we don't have to buy convenience food. By which I mean I made meatloaf out of what I thought was ground pork. Whoever put all those bags unlabeled in my freezer of ground, I don't know what. I like there's pork and there's other things. I never know when I pull one of those out, and it was not me. So it's really influencing how the meatloaf is. So I thought I had ground pork. It was not. So what I have is like ground beef mixed with ground lamb, and that's my meatloaf. And I don't put in a binder like bread or anything because we're actually doing carnivore right now. I'll do an update on that too. And I put all the spices in. I put eggs in, right? And I thought, okay, so since this isn't ground pork, the reason I put ground pork in is it has like a decent high fat content, and that kind of makes the whole thing gel really well, especially if you're not using ground pork. And it keeps sort of like, it keeps it from being dry when you bake it. Because like dry meatloaf, it's like, it tastes good. The mouth feels a little off. Like I can get through it, but do I really want like 90 meatloaves that are dry? So I happen to have some rendered tallow in the fridge, and I just because it's solid, I heated it up and mixed that in as well. And I did this trick that I do. So I didn't get the meatloaf mixed until 6 p.m., which is, we have adjusted our mealtime later because of sunset, but we'll talk about that a different time. And that means that if I was going to bake like the loaf, it would take another hour to hour and a half to cook. So I ended up making the meatloafs while cooking hamburger patties out of meatloaf because they're done in like 20 minutes max just on the stovetop. So and that works. He ate like I don't know, 3 pounds of meat like he usually does. And it was really delicious, but that also gave me a chance to taste that meatloaf and make sure I like it. Now I have 3 more meatloafs in the freezer. And when you're thinking meatloaf, no, it's like the big half or the quarter tray things that you get at Sam's Club. I only fill them halfway to 3/4 full, so not all the way to the top, so that when they're baked, they don't get like all of the stuff that renders down into your oven. And because like one of those about that full is really good for 2 people at my house because that's really feeding 4 people because he's 3 people. And then if mom's here, she doesn't eat that much meat. So I just give her some of mine or some of yours and it's fine. If I fill it all the way to the top, it feeds us for 2 days. So it's just, for me, it was like, it's nice to have this like slightly smaller size. What I really need is like one of those, like an 1/8 tray, but the ones we get are smaller, the ones that I found so far. Like I need them, if I had them extra deep, it would be like 2.5 meatloafs in a normal bread loaf thing. So doing that so we don't have to buy convenience food, because like literally I can take that straight out of the freezer, put it in the oven, bake it. It takes a little bit longer if it's frozen and it's done. Or I can think ahead and I can put that, in the fridge, defrost it, run it through the cold smoker or run it through the smoker, or just put it in the oven and it's great. So yeah, I PC'd meatloaf. It was great. What is PC'd meatloaf? Yeah, I think I'm more ketovore because I do cheese. I don't know that cheese equals ketovore.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that definition, like the finer matters matter for you and not for anybody else. But we've been carnivore for a week, and by we I mean me. My result after 1 week is that I've gained 2 pounds, and that's actually not necessarily bad because I've been having a weird metabolic thing going on since I was really sick in August. So I'm not surprised I went up. And I do feel a lot better. I told him last night I had for like half the night what almost felt like keto flu. So yeah, cheese has more carbs, but like if you don't eat a lot of cheese, it doesn't have as many carbs as you think.
Pressure canned.
Pressure canned what? Meatloaf. Oh, pressure canned. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that'd be good.
What would that do to the texture?
The same thing it does to ground venison. I've made that into stew for you before. You didn't even notice.
Right.
Okay. I mean, it's fine. It's if it's not tender, it makes it more tender. So yeah, that's cool. Anyway, so week 1 of carnivore, I feel better. I was ketovore before I went carnivore, so I'm not going from like typical American diet straight into carnivore, which can be really rough. And I talked to Ken Berry before I did it because I was concerned about the number of calories I'm getting every day, even though you're not supposed to pay attention to calories on that, right? I was like, well, the problem is I was on 0 calories for about a week. And then I was on 100 calories for a while. And then I was on 300 calories. And I haven't, like, when I get over 1,000 calories, it's a minor miracle. I'm sure I'm over that now. He was like, stop tracking calories, eat 3 meals a day, of fatty meats and eggs, and just let your body figure it out. So I'm doing that. I'm just going to have faith in the process. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I'll know in about 4 weeks. But week 1 is under my belt, and the only craving I've had was I really would have liked a cocktail last night. But instead, I had carbonated water. That was it. So I'm not having like the usual sugar or chocolate cravings. And I suspect that's just because I was already mostly not eating that stuff anyway. I don't know. Because I know other people have those cravings, and Andy McCain from I think, is it McCain?
Oh.
Anyway, from Jack's Expert Counsel is like, punch it in the nose with a pickle. Well, a pickle isn't carnivore. So then I just need to eat a spoonful of vinegar. Like, I don't even know what the answer is. But his idea is like, don't feed the craving with something that tastes like the craving. Do it with something that tastes different. And I kind of guess I do that with bacon. If I'm like, I really want a piece of chocolate, I just eat a piece of bacon.
And I mean, as far as I can tell, you're getting a craving for one of 2 reasons. If it's craving for like, a specific flavor, it might be your body wanting the herb. If it's something like sugar, I wouldn't call that a craving. I would call that a withdrawal symptom.
No, it's a craving if you're low on iron.
I mean, that could be possible, but
that's why you bust the sugar craving with broccoli. That's what they always say. But you can bust it with other things. Also, you can make sure your iron's okay. Also, like, I just got blood work too, so we'll see how all that's going as well. That'll be fun. I haven't seen the results yet. I should have it by next week. So, and I always dive in before the doctor goes through it with me because I'm like, how are we doing with all the stuff? Have we moved the Rams yet?
No.
Why?
Because that requires 2 of us, and we are not been aligned on schedules.
This afternoon, I can help move the Rams if we want to.
Okay.
So we'll see. Yeah, we got to get it done. We really got to get it done. Backwoods Butcher offered to process one of my rams at Self-Reliance Festival. I got to get the ram there if we're going to do it, and I can't bring the ram out there in my livestock trailer because my truck will be pulling the Self-Reliance Festival trailer. So if we want to take him up on that, we have to figure out transport for an animal. So if anybody's hearing this and is going to Self-Reliance Festival and always wanted to see a ram processed, today's your day if you have a truck.
We might be able to crate him in the bed of the truck.
He won't be with me when I go out.
Okay.
I'm not bringing him out on that early and then leaving him at Willis's for days on end.
Okay.
With all of Willis's animals. I want him to arrive in time for the moment. And then the moment happens. And then, yeah. It's actually possible I could send Backwoods here on his way through. He could off the ram and we could skin the ram and do more of a butcher demo versus a...
Well, if he's coming through this
area. That's the other way to do it. So, yeah. Anyway, do we need more hay?
Probably.
Do you know what we're doing next week after the pour?
I've heard nothing about it.
We're going to look at hay if we can. that because I've sourced a few different non-sprayed organic hays close to us, and we just need to go look and see if it's horse hay or sheep hay. Yeah. That's it. And then hopefully I'll hear from the other two people we know who are hopefully doing square bales this year. And between all of that, we should get more hay, which is super important. As far as the holler neighbor community, one of the holler neighbors got sick, and they were like, do you want me to still come over or not come over? And I was like, let's just wait till next week, because I need to not get sick between now and Self-Reliance Festival if I can help it. And while I do believe in the strength of the immune system, I also believe in not breathing other people's viral air if I can avoid it. If it had been in a time, and I thought about this, it's like it's never a good time to get sick, is it?
Not really.
But if it had been a time of year when it was just like, well, you know, like you're over the symptoms, the fever's gone, you're probably not going to be still contagious, but we don't really know. If it was that time of year, if it was a different time of year based on what needs to happen for performance for me, I probably would have been like, whatever. Because at some point, if you're never exposed to anything, then your immune system forgets. I think it forgets how to defend it. Which is why I haven't stopped going to the Petri Dish University where I sing with the choir.
Yeah.
Because that's usually where I get the flu is from there, or whatever, colds.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, a room full of people with their mouths open going, ah, it's like there's something to get. You've been exposed to it.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So there you go. So it was foiled by illness. We had planned a holler neighbor dinner Sunday. I'll circle back to see if we're all healthy enough to do one this week. I'm trying to make it so we like get together Sunday night or Friday night once a week, because we sort of put that on hold while I've been going through all my chaos. And I feel like disconnected from holler neighbors in some ways, don't you? A little. And that's just because when you eat together, you talk about what happened in your life and all of that fun stuff.
I probably see them more than you do.
Yeah, that's probably true. Rachel's at an undisclosed warehouse. Someone always has some kind of crud going on. Yeah, that's true. That's 100% true. If you're a school teacher, you get exposed to everything too if you're in the schools of any kind, private or government schools. All of the stuff. The other thing about carnivore, back on that topic, is to be successful at this, we actually bought commercial meat this week because it's a convenience food, right? Sure. I've got bellies to make into bacon, but I haven't made them into bacon. But having good tasting, easy to cook breakfast sausages and bacon has been super helpful. And I've cooked 2 pounds of bacon this week and 4 or 5 pounds of breakfast sausage at this point. And I just don't have any ground pork to make breakfast sausage. So I'm starting to research ground beef based breakfast sausage recipes, which will be drier. And I could just like spice it like meatloaf, but I'm going to try to bring in Grandpa Darby's recipe and do some experiments with that, because I have a decent amount of ground beef left. One of them's from the One Bit Butcher that ground up some bone in the ground beef, which means Tactical and I can eat that, but I can't use that as far as like meals for events, because we don't want somebody choking on that or breaking a tooth or something. So I'll see about making breakfast sausage for that, which will be a beef-based one, just to see how it goes. Like, I think I need to mix tallow in for the same reason I did on the meatloaf. So I don't know, but I want to use what I have, but at the same time, being able to like herk out sausage links or bratwurst or something really easy. You can pre-cook a bunch of that, throw it in your fridge. It's cold. And then if you're like, I'm hungry, my day's been really busy, I didn't have time to cook, and now I've got to eat something, you're like, I got something I can eat for a meal right now that works perfectly. So anyway, we are about to offer sheep for sale. We've got 5 to process this fall. I don't think we're going to keep more than 4. That means we'll have 1 for sale. And I will be taking that to a butcher, not butchering it here unless we change our mind, which I don't think we will this fall. I'm kind of like, usually I just do a sheep processing class and you go home with yours. But this year with everything, I could use some weeks to get things reorganized here. Like, just not just caught up, but just sort of like reset up the systems, adjust the systems based on the construction that's happened, like all of that. So anyway, that means we'll have them for sale. We'll just roll it out in probably the Monday mail when that time comes. So if you're interested in getting one of our sheep, let me know. I did quarters last time. I'm only going to do wholes and halves at this point because figuring out who gets the front leg or back leg doesn't work. I mean, the sheep is just not that much meat compared to a cow.
Yeah.
Like a quarter cow makes sense, but like a sheep, like one of the greatest cuts you can get is a leg of lamb, and then you cook that for Thanksgiving or Christmas or something special, somebody's birthday or something. It's delicious, but you only have 2 per animal, so because it's the back leg. And we'll have that out. Anyway, that's the update from the homestead. It's mostly been centered on this like gravel pad leveling padscaping world, and we actually just got they messed up my order on Wednesday, delivered 2x4s instead of 2x6s for the pad. Yeah. That's been fixed. The 2x6s arrived, and when I had to order the 2x6s, I needed 5, so I ordered 6. Are you glad I ordered 6 instead of 5?
Yeah, because otherwise somebody's going to Lowe's.
I got a Lowe's, like one of the braided 2x6s. You know what I'm talking about, where they twist all around and look like a hair braid. Yeah, one of them looked like that, and he sent it back already. So that's the deal. And maybe they'll stop doing that to me because I keep sending their stuff back. Who knows?
Probably not.
Yeah, it's true. Other people who do construction, what they do is they deal with it and then they send back the extras. But I think it's more impactful when you do it to the driver who pulled your order. Because then they're like, okay, maybe I shouldn't pull crappy lumber for this person. Anyway, that being said, I might have to buy one piece of lumber that's very level to push off and level off the top of that. But we will see if we can get that at least live streamed, if nothing else. And then I don't have to have the giant video on my phone.
Yeah.
We'll see. I don't know. Depends on the weather. If it's pouring down rain, I'm not putting a phone video camera outside to do that. Anyway, thanks for joining us. If you like the show and want to support the work we're doing here, you can do it in 2 ways. One, get your coffee at hollowroast.com. We are like this close to having the launch of what the gift series is going to be like this year. We're still going to have the sampler packs like we always do, but I got something new this year, and it's taken a while to put it together. Patrick Rorman from MT Knives gave me the idea for what we wanted to get it to look the way I want it to look, which we've been like all over the board on. So I'm kind of excited about that. So we'll have that out. Anyway, the other way is become a member. Head over to livingfreeintennessee.com to find out more. And I see that Homestead Medical is here, so don't forget to sign up for his advanced wound closure class. I told you a long story about why that involved house earlier today. Don't forget that. With that, guys, go out, make it a great week.